What's going on, everyone? Let's talk about the Minnesota Timberwolves here for a minute. So I think it was ESPN that did the whole Minnesota would win the Western Conference or be the number one seed in the Western Conference and that they would be a legit title contender. Personally, I'm still not super sold on Minnesota, right? I think that they're going to be a good team. I think that they have potential to, upset or just beat somebody unexpectedly, but I don't think that they're a legit bona fide contender. Anthony Edwards continues to perform the way he's performing and he kind of continues to take that next step, then maybe, he is absolutely dynamic, absolutely incredible. And you look at the Celtics, right? Celtics were 5-0, last of the unbeaten teams, and Minnesota managed to get the win. Now, it was in Minnesota, which I'm sure helps, and it did take overtime, but still, that was a very good win and accomplishment, in my opinion, right? Anthony Edwards goes and gives you 38 points, 9 rebounds, 7 assists, just looks, again, completely dynamic, and Minnesota is that team that could be very surprising. So they're currently at 4-2 on the season, which is good. Their losses are kind of it's weird, right? Because it's they lose their first game to the Raptors, right? Barely, but they still lost to the Raptors. Then they beat the Heat. Okay. Heat have kind of struggled this year, right? And they beat the Heat in dominant fashion. Then they get smoked by Atlanta. Granted, it was in Atlanta, but still, right? Then they go and play the Denver Nuggets, and it looked like that. I don't know, call me crazy, but I saw that game. Right? I was oh, this is the game. Because Minnesota, they got the size, they got the bodies, throw at Jokic. They're an interesting matchup for a lot of teams. And we're going to touch on that here in a moment. But they end up just kind of running through Denver, giving them their first loss. Then they run through Utah, and now they've beaten the Boston Celtics. So they've beaten the two best teams in the league thus far, in very convincing fashion, in my opinion, right? The Celtics game was a little more back and forth, but Minnesota has looked good in those matchups. Now, here's the thing. So they have played 4 home games in which they are 4-0 at home, and they've lost both of their road games. Again, something of concern. As many of you know, I am a Laker fan. I have my Laker channel, As It Stands Lakers. So many of you are familiar and know that I'm a Laker guy. And I have talked, and I even made a video earlier this morning about the Lakers and the concerns of winning on the road. The Lakers have yet to win a road game. They're 3-4 on the season, and their 3 wins were at home, which is great. Right? Same thing with Minnesota. It's great. You want to win at home. You have to win games at home. But if you want to be a contender and you want to win an NBA championship, you have to win on the road. Because if you don't win on the road, you're not winning a championship. Right? Using the Lakers as an example. How did the Lakers get to the conference finals? They won on the road. They were undefeated at home, won a game or 2 on the road against these teams, and then the one time that they weren't able to win on the road, which was against Denver, they ended up getting swept. Miami. They go from a play-in team to being in the NBA Finals. How? Winning on the road. A lot. Right? Winning a lot of games on the road. That's how it works. You have to win games on the road. And so far, Minnesota is one of those teams that hasn't been able to win on the road. Now, they do have some huge wins, and it is good that they are protecting home court. You need that. Minnesota, though, is also just, they're a hard team to gauge, right? Because they're not necessarily built like any other team, right? And they have very dynamic players, right? You look at, like I mentioned, Anthony Edwards this dude could be top 5, top 3 player in the league, and no one would be shocked. not saying he is right now. I'm saying he could get there and no one would be shocked. Dude is ridiculous. I love the veteran presence of Mike Conley, right? You got Rudy Gobert, which still not super sold on that trade. Like, I think the Timberwolves could have made a smaller move or just stuck to the path that they were on and still be as good. But I do think Rudy does help in some regards. I just think that, like, at times Minnesota, it's like clunky and awkward, right? It's like Anthony Edwards is best just like getting a full head of steam and getting to the basket. But like at times it's like Gobert is like a deterrent for even him, right? He seems to kind of be figuring it out better, right? But like that was a real issue last year. Like there were just times where he couldn't get to the rim because Gobert's just this big body standing there and he's got to go through the trees already. And then also Karl Anthony Towns. Now, in the defense of Gobert and Towns, they didn't have a bunch of time together last season. But when they did have time together, even that was a little awkward and clunky. Because I think my problem with the Gobert trade is he basically takes away what made Karl Anthony Towns ridiculously special and Anthony Edwards. Right? Anthony Edwards' ability to just basically get and walk to the rim whenever he wanted to, because he's just faster, stronger, bigger, quicker, and just more athletic than everybody. So he could just easily get to the rim whenever. And then Karl Anthony Towns, his ability to stretch the floor, bring the big out the paint, right? Yes, his shooting is great for a big man, but it was like the icing on the cake or like the cherry on top. It was like Karl Anthony Towns is a really good offensive player around the rim and an excellent center. Oh, and he can also shoot like a guard out on the perimeter, right? It just, I just feel like those are things that kind of become not as significant with Rudy Gobert, but in the same breath, it's like that also seems to be like with Rudy and Cat. It seems to be awkward for teams because like when Cat's going and flowing, he's tough to beat and tough to defend for anybody. But now he usually has like a smaller guy on him because not many teams have like these, two big trees to match up with Gobert and Karl Anthony Towns. And then, Rudy, his ability to just, be this big presence in the interior and block shots and be a deterrent and rebound and just kind of get putbacks and all that stuff. Like, it's an awkward matchup for a lot of teams. And look, I said this last year, and they did give them trouble, right? Is like, I think Minnesota is like the best equipped to like beat a lot of like the better teams. Like, I think they're best equipped to beat a Denver Nuggets in the playoffs. I don't know if their team is experienced enough and good enough yet to do so, but I do. I think because you have Rudy Gobert, you do have Karl Anthony Towns, right? You have guys like Naz Reid and stuff that you could just throw at Jokic, right? You got Mike Conley and Anthony Edwards that you could throw on, a Jamal Murray. The Phoenix Suns, right? They already are going to have trouble with size, right? Like, and now they're going to have to deal with two big bodies in Karl Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert. Having McDaniels, right? Who, I mean, you can make an argument. He's one of, if not the best defensive guys in the league, right? Jaden McDaniels. His ability to defend out on the perimeter. Even Nickeil Alexander, right? Like, got another guy that can defend out on the perimeter, right? Kyle Anderson. Mike Conley is that savvy vet. Anthony Edwards is one of the best defensive guards in the league, right? Like, they have the equipment, I guess, to beat some of these more upper echelon teams. Question is, do they have the experience and just like talent to put it together, right? Like, I still think Anthony, like, the only way I see Minnesota really making a deep playoff run is if this is the year that Anthony Edwards kind of, maybe he doesn't step into the top 10 guy, but he's playing to that, right? Like, where it's like, is this guy a top 10 player already? Is this guy like a top 8 player? Whatever. Like, I think unless he takes like some real stride, which, I mean, again, he's been fantastic, right? But I think unless he is like superstar, right? I don't think Minnesota has enough to really beat some of these just talented upper echelon teams, right? I do think that they have the potential to surprise somebody or just, I think that they'll be a tough out. Like, I don't think you're just going to run through Minnesota, right? Like, I don't. Like, I think if you play Minnesota, you're going to have to beat them and it's going to be tough. You're not like, I don't see a team necessarily just sweeping and running through many. Right? I think they're gonna be a very good, formidable, tough opponent that is just gonna be very difficult to deal with. But they're gonna have to start winning on the road here. So they have one more home game against the Pelicans. Then they go on a 5-game road trip against the Spurs, the Warriors, the Suns, and the Pelicans. They're losing bare minimum one of those Warrior games, right? Because I just don't see them beating the Warriors back to back. Although, I mean, they're massive compared to the Warriors, but I just think the Warriors probably win one of those games. Both of the games are at home. Warriors are excellent at home. But then you got like the Pelicans, who if you beat at home, they're going to be looking for that revenge. Phoenix Suns, do they finally get, Bradley Beal and Devin Booker and everybody, and are they back? They'll probably all be back for the Laker game, which is on the 10th, right? But Minnesota's going to have to start putting some of these wins together. They're going to have to start really kind of, proving that they can win on the road. It's great that they're winning at home. Got to win at home. But you also got to win some games on the road. But Minnesota they look tough. They've looked good. Again, I'm not like super sold on them yet. But, if you had a time machine and you jumped in that time machine and you came back and you were like, hey, dude, Minnesota's in like the conference finals or something, like I wouldn't be shocked. Like I don't really know how to gauge Minnesota. And again, that's my opinion. And as always, I pass the question on to you. Let me know yours down in the comments below. What do you think? Do you agree with me? Do you think like, this team is like legit? This team is for real? Do you think like, no, like, they're good. They're not great. Like they're not contender level great. But again, however you feel, whatever your thoughts are, I'd love to hear it. So let me know down in the comments below. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me out a lot. Lets me know you enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. If you're not subscribed to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell notifications. I will see you all in the next one.